Welcome to the Meeple Syrup Aftershow. Designers discussing design. We're on episode 48, Meeples and Mechanics, and we didn't scare everyone away. Actually, we even subbed in. Steven had to go to bed, but Justin came back from MeepleShirts.com, so he's going to hang out with us for the aftershow as we freestyle conversation about game mechanics. And so we'll just kind of, if everyone just kind of goes with don't talk too long, but cut in when you want to add in a topic or a point. Just jump in, and we're just going to chat for a little bit, kind of late night. Maybe if a few drinks might loosen people up, but we're just going to chat about game mechanics, stuff we like, stuff we're trying to design. I'd love to talk about, Gilmore talked a few times about using that, mechanics that you haven't seen done well, using that as a challenge. Let's talk about that stuff.
All right. First question I have, best catch-up mechanics. What do you think?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've been thinking actually a bunch about catch-up mechanics. I'm trying to remember what game it was that I was originally thinking about it. But anyways, I was thinking, forgetting about plugging games. But the point is, I was thinking about things like turn order is obviously an easy thing to use when it comes to catch-up mechanics. But I was also thinking variable player powers, like if they're not actually balanced, that there's advantages to certain roles. Those would be neat ways to use that you get something if you're losing. And so then there's this little cat and mouse game of like, I don't want to be first, but I don't want to be last. Like if you put kind of somewhere in the middle, maybe the more powerful roles. So those are a couple mechanics that I was thinking about.
Right. I'd played around with each player had variable powers, but you got the ability to fire them off if you had lost the previous round.
Nice. Yeah, or depending on standings or yeah. That'd be cool.
Yeah, I wanted to do one where the people who are at the back, and this is actually how it works in our Godfather game, is that you score favor with the Godfather, and the Godfather gets to take a lot of the area control because he's the Godfather, but he can't use any of his powers. He can't use any powers that everybody else can use, so it's sort of not taxing the leader, like Belfort taxes the actual leader, but this one allows the people who are maybe not doing so well potentially to have access to abilities that the person who is conceivably doing better in the mid-game doesn't have access to those powers. So that's one way we're doing it. Actually, what brought this up, interestingly enough, was has anybody played Monster Laundry by Haba?
Oh, not
I haven't played it yet.
I picked it up at Gen Con. I haven't played it yet.
Well, it's super cool, but one of the coolest things is the most simple catch-up mechanic possible. So in Monster Laundry, you wear a laundry line around your waists of all the players, and you're basically trying to clip with pegs, laundry pegs, clothes pegs, monsters onto your clothesline to your left and to your right, and it's stars on your left, circles on your right of your color. Let's say that's it. When you win, you win the round, you win the round. You get a golden clothes peg signifying that you win the round. Then to start the next round, everybody has to remove what they've put on their clothesline. So the person who had the least is actually going to be faster to start building their clothesline back up again because the person who was first has all 10 monsters on their line.
Totally.
Isn't that super simple?
Super simple.
Really
So you're up ahead in points, so now you have to deal with managing those points.
Yeah.
That's really clever.
It's so elegant. Loved it.
Yeah. That's a cool one.
Is
Any
Brian
other?
back yet?
I'm ordering that right now on Amazon. I have it. It's $18.99. It's Prime shipping. I'm getting it.
Yeah, man, it's a good game. Other catch-up mechanics that you guys like?
Or in general, is there any mechanics that have just jumped at you recently, like games that you played where
You're like, damn, I wish I invented that or I thought of that?
Not recently, and it kind of ties into the catch-up mechanics, but I've always been a huge fan of the corruption in Cleopatra and the Society of the Architects.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's a really clever And whoever has the most corruption is just eliminated. I've always been a fan of that.
Yeah. It's not about catch-up, but it came up late in the game as we were talking about it, is cooperative games, because I find that I feel like cooperative games are getting better, as they've kind of gotten a foundation, and then people are iterating on it and finding like the problems, like with alpha gamers or things like that, and better at resolving it. And I'm just kind of wondering, as designers, first of all, I mean, I just don't know your guys' catalog out there, but no, I don't have a cooperative game from any of you, do I?
Nope.
Right?
So never,
I mean,
never will be.
Well, right, and is that something that you guys avoid? And like, what are the challenges?
I think the problem I have with most cooperative games is you have to play with the right group of people. A lot of the games I've played with cooperatively, there's always someone that's the alpha.
Mm-hmm.
And they're telling people how to take their actions. And at that point, it's not really a cooperative game.
Yep. Even I've tried to think of ways to attack the alpha, and every time I do that, I'm kind of like, but now I'm making a whole bunch of rules that just are like so. For instance, like the alpha gamer, right? Like, what if once you take your turn, you can't communicate? So then you have whoever takes an action. The next person, now there's only 3 of the 4 of us to take actions. They can brainstorm together. Then, someone takes an action and 2. But it just...
So
whatever,
Charade's the cooperative game.
Yeah, basically. I need to work charades in. But
I thought you didn't want to work charades in.
No, I don't. This sounds like a nightmare, co-op and charades. But that legitimately sounds like my place of hell. But at the end of the day, every time I tackle it, I go, but in the first place, the whole reason you would use co-op is so that all people would work together, and an alpha gamer breaks all people working together. So
it's kind of like trying to design around a cheater. At some point in the design process, you're like, oh, well, it'd be really easy for somebody to cheat if they did this.
Right.
And you're like, oh, well, don't play with cheaters.
Right.
But the weird part is you're kind of saying, hey, let's work together, and we live in a world where there's leaders and followers, but then don't let people be leaders and followers. Yeah. Like, it would be like making a game where the name is cheat, but you tried to not use cheating.
Yeah.
Like, funny, to me, that seems weird.
I actually don't mind being alpha gamed in a cooperative game. I don't like being alpha gamed or told what to do in a competitive game, though.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's something we tried to tackle a lot in Dead of Winter, with the secret
sure.
objectives and stuff. I mean, I think, the secret objectives, because you can't fully trust the other players.
Yes. See, to me, that's instantly not a cooperative.
Right.
The trader stops that issue.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we called it meta-cooperative. We feel that it's not quite cooperative, but it's not competitive either.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I see. And then I think, I totally don't think it's cooperative, because you each have an individual win condition.
Yeah. We're doing a one against many hidden movement game. It's cooperative for one side of the team.
Right.
Yeah, but that's more team or one. Yeah. I mean, one versus many team cooperative, right? I mean, they're very distinct to me.
Right.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I mean, Jonathan, we're talking about potentially doing a co-op for that for Six Gun.
Yeah, how have we not talked about that yet? The two of you have been on air for an hour, and this hasn't happened.
Talked about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, because it's nothing yet. It's just a bunch of ideas in our head.
Nothing.
So we have a month. We have like 3 more weeks to kind of put stuff together and ship it off, and not a game, but ideas for the game, and see what floats. We're going to be pitching the ideas to the creators of the comic book and saying, hey, this is what we envision, what do you think? And they'll either say, we hate you, or we love it, or somewhere in between. Probably be somewhere in between. But yeah, so Jay and I actually went over the ideas today. He's like, oh, that's not at all what it looks like when you wrote it. It's just because some of the ideas you gotta see on paper. So Jonathan and Jay and I will probably have a Google Hangout meeting where I'm going to point the camera at the table and we'll move bits around and stuff like that, so that we can all kind of get on the same page and say, is that what we want to do?
Yeah.
So in that, I mean, if we're talking about mechanics, I think everybody in this panel, and even people who aren't game designers yet, who might want to be game designers someday, or even people who play a lot of games, we're always talking about that next big mechanic. What is going to be that next thing? Are we followers or are we leaders in terms of making mechanics? Have you designed any game that's using like a brilliant new mechanic that we're not going to necessarily talk about, or are we people who have just copied other mechanics?
It's weird though. Like originality and innovation is a unique thing. It was like I think it was Eric W. Martin today posted about the new 5-sided shape that you can tile with. Did anyone catch that?
Yeah, I saw it.
It's like it's a new invented like pattern.
Oh, it's like a polygon that you can actually.
Yeah, a new polygon pattern. And to me, I looked at it and I went, really? Like that's new? And you compare it to like the 27 whatever polygon patterns, you're like, it looks so similar, but it's unique. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think that's like a unique mechanic. I mean, you're still tile laying.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. Like all of a sudden, they invented a new math, something innovative, but really, a lot of innovation, I think, is subtle.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is tweaking existing mechanics to make it fresh.
Yeah.
Whether that's interpreted as new or not, that's up to the person judging it. But deck building, when that hit, it was new, but it wasn't really any different than a person buying a bunch of Magic cards and building their own deck, and making their own. It just took it another step where you started with basics and then bought the cards to build your deck.
Well, it's like you took the meta game and made it the game.
Yep.
Right.
The meta of buying cards and making decks.
I'd say like games that use digital apps or whatnot. I mean, that's kind of like the new mechanic. Like we're finding new ways to do that.
Right, but it's a weird. That's an interesting. Trying to get digital and analog to play nice together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It hasn't caught on yet, and is that because people that play analog want it to be analog and don't want it to be digital?
There's definitely some pushback for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot that apps and whatnot can do for a game that can bring it to the next level. You just have to buy into it and want to have that experience.
Right.
But I think that incorporation is just like the kind of the innovation discussion that you're kind of dancing around a little bit. Is that are we making something new, or are we just revising and iterating? And it was a conversation I had with some people because I had a local game con just this last weekend up in the Seattle area called Dragonflight, and tons of games and all this other stuff. And we were talking. We realized that because there's all these new games that people were trying, and when we were trying to introduce them to kind of gauge what people wanted to play, the question or the answer always ended up, it's a combination of this and this.
Totally.
Like, it's the baby of, it's like Deus and Patchwork had a baby, or whatever, like that.
That'd be a funny baby.
I want that baby.
Yeah.
But is that innovative, and how is that perceived? And
if
you don't perceive it as innovation, do gamers really want that? Again, not from a game designer's perspective, but as a gamer, right? Because we're always looking, there's that element of like, say you always want something new and different, but then that's scary. And so you always try to go back to something familiar and comfortable. Like you try to associate back to something that you're at home with to make you like feel like you can approach it.
Right. I think you're right, Suzanne. It's talking with a lot of publishers, a lot of times they'll ask, well, what's new about it?
Yeah.
What's new about your game? What's different? Well, maybe there's nothing completely new about it, but maybe it's just better. Maybe it's just tweaked a little bit better. And I think, we all suffer from cult of the new. What does this have new to offer us? Well, sometimes it doesn't need to be new in order to be good. Right? So I think, we have to judge a game on its merits and not whether it has something new to offer.
Sorry, I'm just looking for something. Bonacor, so Stephen Bonacor will always ask, what is unique and stands out about your game thematically, mechanically, and fantastically?
Fantastically, I love that.
That's his exact wording.
Yep, but they're perfect. It's totally like you know what he's asking.
Yeah, will it stand out on a table? Will people talk about this game because of, what it looks like, how it plays, what it's about? So, yeah.
So, a theme plays a big part in that. But if you had asked, 5, 6, 7 years ago, would a game about medieval farming be fantastical?
No.
No. Everyone would go, oh my god, that sounds so boring. And even when I explain it to non-gamers, they go, that sounds really boring.
Yep.
Well, I actually don't think that Stronghold would ever sign that game.
That's very true. Every publisher has their own niche, but and that's the thing. It's like you can take a pretty boring theme, if you will, and make it great with great gameplay.
Yep.
So, I've talked to John about, I've had this idea for a few years about a game where you're creating like a symphony hall and symphony orchestra. And I've talked to a couple gamer friends and I said, well, that doesn't sound very interesting, But again, it's the gameplay that makes it interesting.
Neither does shipping in the Mediterranean, right?
Exactly.
I had no interest in Rococo, but then I played it and I loved it. Like it's not my personal taste, but it's a fantastic game.
Such a good game.
Yeah. Suzanne said something that kind of twinged me in terms of, people, like new mechanics can be scary. And what happens with that is that then it becomes unteachable.
Mm-hmm.
Or less learnable, or less graspable, or less approachable, right? And if that's the case, then you don't have any hooks to hang your hat on. Mm-hmm. Whereas, if you looked at Belfort at its core, it is really just, it's our evolution of Kalis, is what it is. It's not, it didn't necessarily start out that way, but it kind of finished that way. Is that, oh yeah, I like Kalis, but I don't like it. I don't like how dry the theme is in Kalis. So when it ended up becoming what it is now, it's like, okay, so did it do anything different? Yeah, it did some things different. Did it do some things better? Potentially some things better, potentially some things worse. But because it had these little hooks that were the same as certain other games, then it just kind of took some mechanics and put them together in neat ways, but the mechanics themselves were already kind of staples in the genre. Then it was easier to teach and learn that way than if it was all brand new. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like chords in music, right? If you know any guitar chords, you can string together the song. But if you're playing these weird jazz chords and you've never played jazz before, it's really hard to appreciate and play.
Interesting question. Well, I think it's an interesting question about that is when that was introduced, was it perceived as something new or something fresh when you took mechanics from something else and put them together in a new way?
No, but what it became, a lot of people called it the X killer.
Okay.
They would say, this killed this game for me. It replaced this game in my collection.
Okay.
Because it really wasn't revolutionary, it was evolutionary, right?
Right.
It took the same thing and just added a little bit more in a little cleaner package in a little better way. And that's kind of what you were saying, Brian. That, it doesn't have to be, world-beating. It just has to be better.
Yeah, like I think even going a little further down that line, on the practical side, as a game owner, like I buy a few games, I get to play them once or twice, and then I learn this new game, and I go, is that better than what I have on my shelf?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I kind of think there's a bit of this cult of the new experience of I'll play something once or twice, and then I'll move on. Mm-hmm. And so you're always checking out like that new game and then comparing it to that one or two favorites. So it's hard for a game to really have legs because you're competing against history. But the new game will always get checked out. Like we're always looking to see like when's my next favorite game going to come out.
Hmm. It's just, I think it's the nature of the people who play games
Which is
is that they
interesting to
always
me.
want.
I don't see, for example, like in like movies, for instance. I used to be obsessed with movies, and there's genre folks, like people that will like no matter what in that genre, I will buy that and add that to my collection. I don't find that as much in board games.
Meaning what? Sorry, like what? Give an
Well,
example of how that translates to board games.
like worker placement, for instance. People will usually have a few go-to worker placements in their collection, and then they'll move on. And unless a game replaces it, they don't really buy all worker placement games.
Right.
So, but if I'm a movie person and I love noir films, or I love indie comedies, I might buy every indie comedy there is because they all have certain styles or whatever. So I'm just saying, like, the collector, it's different in board games than other mediums.
I don't know. I've got friends like that. I have one friend that if it's a deck builder, he's going to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Would you say all
friends
mechanics are like that, or just a few, like deck building, card type things?
Oh, what was that?
Would you say there's certain mechanics that gravitate to that, or would you say that you would know someone for every different kind of mechanic?
I don't know if I know somebody for every different one, but I know a guy who's like that about worker placement games.
Yeah, I mean, I know people are like that about genres.
And I do that about storytelling games.
Yeah, I feel like it's less for some reason in board games.
No, I definitely I own hundreds and hundreds of games, but a good percentage of them are dexterity. A good percentage of them are set collection. A good percentage of them are storytelling games, because those are the mechanics I like. So I will always check out games with mechanics I like, and if I check it out, the chances of me buying it are higher, I guess. So maybe that's it. Maybe you just like too many varieties of games, Daryl.
Yeah, maybe, but I do find, like, even working in stores and cafes, people want to round out their collection.
Oh, for sure.
So-
Because you buy games not just for yourself.
Exactly. So
Whereas
that's more where I'm
movies and
saying,
books, a lot of those types of things are really for yourself.
yeah,
More so.
that's more what I'm pointing to. But
So let me ask you this then: as designers,
Mhm.
if you're just trying to be, if you're fulfilled by feeling like you've made something better, and you're an evolutionary is as fulfilling as revolutionary, then where does longevity come into play? Because I know as gamers, right, one of the things you're going to hear gamers talk about, and this goes to like collections too, is replayability, right? So how much does that play into your design mindset as you're developing games? And then tying it back to kind of the original conversation, like, are there mechanics that lend it, just like inherently feel like they lend themselves better to like kind of ongoing replayability?
yeah, if I can jump in first, I just want to jump in and say I actually think I probably designed too much with replayability in mind. And ironically, I think a game only gets played so many times, I probably didn't have to put so much effort into that.
Mhm.
I mean, like, I feel like in hindsight, like, just because the game could play so many times, I should have been more realistic and said, let's just make the optimal game experience for the first few times. If you make a game that's fantastic the first time you play, in our culture, it would sell.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a first-time design thing. There's definitely a like it's your magnum opus type thing going on for some people for certain games. And then, like, now, it's funny because Travis from Action Point says, I get how you guys work. I don't know if I said this last week, but he says, you finish your games to about 80 or 90%. I said, yeah, that's right, because we don't know if anybody's going to buy them or want them, and we'll finish them if you like it, type thing. In some cases, right? So I don't necessarily advise that. I'm not saying do that. I'm saying when you have 9 or 10 designs that you're working on and you don't work in games full time, like Daryl and Jonathan do. And I'm frozen apparently. My picture's frozen. Oh,
Oh,
there's
we hear
Susan.
you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
that sometimes you can't finish every game, and sometimes finishing every game is actually not what you want to do anyways, because you should actually be giving some of the lead to the publisher in terms of their direction for it. Anyway,
I think for me, designing the one of the things, it has to be fun. Like, it doesn't have to be brand new, brand spanking new, or even evolutionary. As if it's fun, I'm going to play it.
Yep.
So, when I design something, or when I go out and start designing something, do I have this mindset of, oh, I have to create something new? I don't. I have this mindset of, I want this to be fun, and if something new comes out of it, that's awesome. But if not, at least I've created an experience
Yep.
for people that they will enjoy it.
right.
Totally.
I agree with that as well. Like, I mean, I don't usually set out to start designing something that is brand spanking, innovative or anything like that. I want to engage people and I want them to have fun, and I want to have fun doing that. And
Right.
that's kind of about it. I'm just gonna check my camera. You guys keep talking.
All right.
Oh, I was gonna say I actually maybe do that more often, like what John Gilmore was saying, where it's like kind of responding to, either a combination I haven't seen or a mechanic where I go, or a game that I didn't like, but I'm curious what way would I like that game, and so I think often it's not necessarily totally innovation, but it is kind of a response. Like I'm trying to move in a new way.
And I mean, Brian knows I tend to obsess over replayability.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that when he and I are working on a few different designs together.
Yep.
It's really important to me because one of the central things whenever I design a game is I try to design it for me as somebody who would possibly play it 100 times. I mean,
Yep.
I've played Cosmic
Well, you have
Encounters 100 times.
And you have to play your own 100 times.
Yeah, so and I want to be able to keep playing it after it's published and I have it. Like I don't want it to be done with its lifetime at that point.
Totally.
So for me, replayability is very important. And it's probably I'd rather overdo it on replayability than underdo it.
That's true. That's true. Especially if a game gets legs, then all of a sudden, you're thankful you did.
Yeah, I mean, if someone's like, "Oh, I got 5 plays out of this and I'm done with it, but I wanted more," then you're up the creek until you can get an expansion out.
That's true.
Yeah, I mean, I think is that what you're mentioning though, Daryl, when you're talking about putting too much effort, is that you built all the modularity into it and you have expansions already thought up and all
I
that
just
kind of stuff?
think sometimes especially early on, one of the reasons I actually gravitate to area control as a mechanic in general is I actually think area control has massive replayability because it inherently forces that the interaction determines points.
Yeah.
So for me, replayability is often where the people matter. So I love designing games where you need different people, different stories, different reasons for choices to be made, and then when those clash together, that creates a different scenario every time. So you just have to change one person at the table, and you're gonna have a totally different game.
Mm.
So that is often where I'm coming from early on in a game design is, if I played this all of a sudden with so-and-so, how would this game change? And so that's what I'm constantly kind of working on is trying to do a mix of people and how that creates a new experience. But on the flip side, I'm probably worrying too much about it because often games get played on average 1.7 times.
Yeah.
Did you just make that stat up?
Yes.
It's actually true.
I think it's
I've heard
1.8
it
or
as
what?
less.
I think it's 1.7 or 1.8, whatever it is. It's close to that.
I heard it as 0.7.
Oh, was it 0.7? Maybe.
It's 1.6.
Is that what people buy games and then don't play them? Is that how you get 0.7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'd be-
I have good.
So you're at a 0.3.
I have a bunch of games that I own that I have not played.
Yeah.
Or I trade for.
Yeah.
I trade something I played, but now I am someday I'm
Or
gonna
you
play.
back it on Kickstarter and then you just forget that you backed it.
I have a whole shelf over here, and half of them I have not played. It's horrible.
You should do an entire show on storing your games.
No, you need to watch Board Games with or
Board Games with Scott.
board shelves with Scott.
Yeah.
Yeah, Scott Nicholson just did a great video about shelves.
It was awesome.
It was pretty funny. Yeah. I think in designing and mechanical stuff. Oh, that's a good question. Theme first or mechanics first?
No.
Both.
Intertwined?
They are very
depends on the
close.
game.
Very close. I'm going to say theme first, because that can give you ideas for what mechanics to use. But there have been times where I've said, I want to create a worker placement game, and then I think, well, what kind of theme can I use that will best use it? But John and I had this idea for this tower building game, and out of that came, the mechanics to use with it.
Yeah, it's so hard to name what came first because if I tackle it one way, whatever I originally intended might get cut anyways. So if I say to myself, oh, I want to go in building a worker placement, and then over time I'm like, oh, this doesn't really fit with this theme. I wish it was this way. Well, let's try that. And then I start trying that. Well, all of a sudden I'm not making a worker placement anymore. So
right.
I'd probably most consistently name first.
Yeah, I do a lot of name first as well.
Sell it. It's so funny. I have a quick story about that. John and I are working on a game, and a couple years in Origins, I'm walking down the street, and we're getting food, and we walk by this pizza place, and there is a sign in the window for the Columbus Zoo that says Dinosaur Island.
Oh, is that where you got that?
Nice.
Yeah, and I'm walking by. I'm like, oh my god, that would make a great game.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sometimes the name can spur things.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. We design name first an awful lot.
Yeah.
I got the idea actually originally from Sen. I remember Sen told me about how he and Jay have another forum. So the game artisans have a forum that all of us talk on. But obviously, because Jay and Sen do a lot of design together, they have a separate forum for just the Bamboozle Brothers. Yes, I've been allowed a secret side entrance.
Yeah, so is John.
Yeah, so there's little spots that they let you in. In the Venn diagram, it's a very small little little circle in the corner. But one of the things that cracked me up, which originally when Sen said it to me, I thought it was actually nuts because I was not in the board game club. But in hindsight, I'm like, that's brilliant. Was that him and Jay would go back and forth, and they just had a running file of funny names, of just words and ideas where they just whenever something hit, they just threw it up there. So they would just throw something, and that would just evoke a game idea, and they wouldn't even explain it, but then that might ping pong a discussion between the two of them. So
sure.
Yeah, and then definitely for us, mechanics seem to be the first thing that come out, but they are, like you said, Brian, they are informed by theme an awful lot. So usually I'm the one that comes up with a mechanic, and then Jay comes up with, oh, it could be this, and say, oh yeah, let's go with that, and then we just kind of roll with whatever theme he picked, and then it gets reshaped every now and then, but I think it's really, really interesting. It's funny when Gavin Brown first, I think Gavin was the first one I heard say it. Game design is an emergent process, and I was thinking about it. I'm thinking, I don't know if it is, but now that I've done it a lot more, it really, really is an emergent process. And I might have an idea of where I wanted to go thematically or mechanically, but like you said, Daryl, sometimes you just gotta murder your darlings and say, no, that's not where the game wants to go.
Yeah, you follow the fun.
Yeah. And we've been doing it a lot better lately, and noticing, oh yeah, you're only holding on to that baggage because you thought it was clever once upon a time, and really it's got to go in order for the game to keep on progressing. What did you guys? What have you killed in your history as a game designer? What is one thing that maybe in a game that's been published or a game that's coming out that you can say, it used to be this way, but we had to kill it, like a mechanic that you just had to get rid of?
I can buy our guest time, but I'll tell you one first, which is funny because it might come full circle. But for Walled City, I had, and it's funny because it was Sen's favorite mechanic in the game. I had a voting system for seats in the town hall, and it was just kind of like this nice little tight way to change the allocation of the 5 political parties. And I pulled it out because of a really insightful comment. Someone said, "I don't like looking at 2 boards. Like, I want to be able to look in one direction while I play the game," which I thought was a really insightful comment. That, to be engaged and to kind of lose yourself, you can't just keep moving around. But that game or that mechanic or side thing that I killed, I ended up turning into a kids game that's now being evaluated by Hasbro. So, it's funny because I would have said for the longest time, like, I really regret pulling that out, and now, hey, it could be awesome. So,
Brian, yeah, go ahead.
In 2 of my games, actually, one published and one with John, both times I took on an auction mechanic. Or we took out an auction mechanic. In my first game, Titans of Industry, there was an auction for buying these buildings, and just playing through the game, multiple playtests, it was like, this is just adding way too much time to the game without adding much benefit. We did the same thing in our dinosaur game, where there was a bidding mechanic to buy things in the game, and it was just, or for turn order, actually it was for turn order. We're like, this is just adding much time, and it really doesn't do anything, so we ended up cutting that. So I haven't had much luck in the auction mechanic.
You and auctions are like,
I love the mechanic, though.
oil in the water.
I'm trying to find a game, come up with a game where
there's
it
another one,
works.
Brian. Brian, we'll make an auction game.
All right, there you
Yeah.
go.
We'll definitely think about Dutch auctions because they're really cool.
All right.
Or look them up. John, did you kill anything in any of your games?
Dead of Winter had a really cool. Instead of having the exposure die, it was a deck of cards.
Right.
And whenever a survivor would get exposure, they would draw a card, and if it was a wound, they'd turn it face up. But if it was a bitten or a miss, they'd put it underneath the survivor.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and the survivors would start to stack up wounds, and they wouldn't trigger right away. That guy's got a
I can see where that's
ton
going.
of cards under him, so we need to kill him off before he turns into a zombie.
Totally, the paranoia. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
wonderful.
It was a fantastic mechanic, and when we talked about changing it to the exposure die, I was super resistant.
Totally.
I was like, no, we got to keep it in there, and we took it out, and it streamlined the game so much.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it's something
It's already a long game that you needed to streamline somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
one
tough.
of the decisions that we had to make, but it's something I'll just I'll use again later on because I really love the paranoia of it.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
I'm sure we can find a use for it somewhere, John.
I'm sure.
Yeah. We've totally destroyed games, like ripped them apart and pulled things out of them. One of the decision points is explaining this, or writing the rules for this thing worth the effort of what this thing is giving us.
Totally. I'm learning that more and more. Like, rules, like if it isn't efficient in teaching it, oh man, I'm sick and
if I
tired of that
can't
rule.
explain it in words and I have to use pictures, it's gone. We just have to streamline things for the audience. That is what it is, especially for the weight of the game, right? It depends on the weight of the game. If the game is like a really heavy Euro gamers game or something like that, maybe we'll leave all the really intricate and cool things in there. But the market isn't such that those games are what are selling at the moment. Doesn't mean we can't design them. It just means that
I love designing them.
We might have a long-term goal on those ones of, let's look in like a year. And it's actually funny. We've heard it from a lot of publishers at Gen Con this year. So where do you have a big box game? It's like, no, we don't. You guys always asked for the small box games last year. Well, now we want big box games.
Why do you think that is?
Why do I think that? Oh, because
Yeah.
they're reacting to the market.
Yeah.
Well, and why do you think that is that they're turning, like, why do you think big box games are making a comeback?
Uh, they're not necessarily making a
I
comeback
don't
in
think they're
droves
making
and
yet.
droves. It's not droves and droves. They just need one or two to
Yeah.
make their catalog, to fill out their catalog in a specific way.
Mm-hmm.
They'll still. It's funny, like monetarily, depending on their margins, you can make a lot of money on small games, but you can also not make anything.
Right.
Hmm.
Because, like, let's say you're targeting for mass market, like Target or Walmart.
Yeah.
Your price point has to be at what they demand it at, like $9.95 or whatever. That's selling price. That's not
Yeah.
whatever. And if you can only make it, and it costs you, $6 to make it, and they're buying, 10,000 units of it or 50,000 units of it, and then you're saying, okay, maybe I can get it down to $5, and then your margins increase by little bits, but you're still not making a ton of money. But hobby games in the market, if there's a hobbyist who is willing to pay, say, $90 for Eclipse,
Hmm.
the amount of money you're making on that per unit is great. However, you're not actually selling a lot of units. So a lot of it depends. And so different product lines and different publishers are looking for big box games more so now than they were last year and the year before, because I think the micro game thing has come and gone in a way. It'll always be around. There'll always be a need for small box games, but it isn't quite the thing that everybody was looking for those things last year.
I still feel like big box is pretty rare. Like
Oh,
I
I
think,
know. I don't think it's common. I'm not saying it's a common thing. I'm just saying that designers don't have any left because they
right.
were reacting to the market of
Yeah.
everybody wanted smaller games.
I felt like at least at Gen Con especially, it was like, what $20 to $40 game do you have? That's the
Right.
game I want.
Yes. Yes.
And so I had a few of those, and I had smaller games. I had one bigger game, and every time everyone gravitated to the same $20 to $40 games.
Yeah. Same
Every
with
time.
us.
It
Same
was
with us.
wild.
We when we collated all our talk of who goes where, this one game, Nine Thieves, always came out at the top. It's like, oh, that's going to like 7 publishers apparently.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
didn't, but because we don't want to give it all to 7
No.
people, but that was the one, and it is the one that if you looked at the components, you'd say, oh yeah, that's a $25 game, $30 game. And then all the small card games, a couple people, and then all the bigger big box games were a couple people, or the ones that would take a lot to manufacture were 2 people. So it sort of goes like a bell curve, literally like a bell curve. When you hit that
Mhm.
sort of over 20, under $40 mark, and we might be talking Canadian here, so it might be 17.50
So like
to
$2 or $5.
yeah.
Right.
So then that's when you get that big spike in interest, is in those mid-level games, like a box size like Cacao or Carcassonne
Yes.
or any of those style games. That's what people want and can sell. So for a lot of things. But then, I mean, that doesn't explain the popularity and the marketability of something like Dead of Winter, which is in a box that is much bigger and the cost much bigger. So, that's not the answer to every question, is make a small game or a small box game.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that, like, if you're going to speculate, I mean, and I know people have varying opinions on where we are in the hobby, because, I've been gaming since '94, and I know a lot of people have been, I know people have been gaming since the '70s, but I mean, I've had 20 years, of watching gaming evolve. Speculation-wise, do you see the potential, if whatever kind of hobby growth we're seeing, which you see in the numbers of conventions and stuff like that, if that kind of growth doesn't pop, that bell curve you're talking about, Sen, do you see that kind of the right-hand side of that bell curve lifting a little as more people come into the hobby? Because you're flooding more people in. Some will click, some won't. But theoretically, if the more in, if you have a 0.01% conversion rate, right, from non-gamer to gamer, the more in, the more out, just quantity-wise. So speculation-wise, do you think that there's that potential that, like, in 2 years, in 4 years, that demand for more complex games will grow in the market simply because we'll have the gamers of today who are being introduced to the hobby.
Mm-hmm.
Their tastes will evolve, their experiences will evolve, and they'll be looking for new challenges. Or is that just way too crazy?
No, I mean, I don't ever think it's going to be the same as entry-level games or as, quick kind of impulse buy games. People always want those.
Right.
Well, I feel
experienced gamers want that.
But I feel like
Yeah.
that's increasing. Like I feel like that side's the side that increases because as people come into the hobby, I feel like because more people came into the hobby, a bunch of people are saying, "Well, of my friends, someone owns that expensive one, so I don't need to buy
Good
that
point.
one."
Mhm.
And so, but for $20 or $10, I'll pick up one of those for myself because
Mhm.
I can play that with my family. I can play. So I feel like that side of the curve is just like exploding.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Versus,
But
I don't
yeah,
think
and
a lot of people are saying I need to lock up like $80 in that one game.
yeah, and I think my point about the publishers wanting the big box game or the medium-sized games is because they
Right.
have so many
So
options
many.
for
Yes,
the
I
small,
agree with that.
and they've
I
already
agree with that.
signed out, their 2016 lineup for that
Yeah.
size game. So saying, well, we need a bigger one. Nobody's designing a bigger one.
Yeah,
We just want one.
every designer is trying to play the odds, so every designer is making the small and mediums, hoping to land something, and no one's really making the big box because that's the hard work of shopping it around to everyone just to find the one
And, you have to be realistic. The small games are easier to play test. Get on
easy
the
to play
table.
test, easy to get to the table.
John, Brian.
Yes.
No, I agree completely. I mean, big box games are a lot harder to design too. I mean, it's just a lot more work overall.
What do you enjoy making more?
I really enjoy making the big games.
Yeah, I love making big games.
hmm I kind of enjoyed the challenge though of trying to create something small that is maybe unique or fun to play that hasn't
Sure.
been done before.
Yeah, the elegance challenge.
Yeah, exactly. Like John and I are working on a game currently, this tower building game, and we've refined a bunch of things and taken out components and just streamlined it. Where right now it's like 2 decks of cards and some cubes. And that's attractive probably to a lot of publishers because the cost to build it is not expensive.
Right.
When you bring a big box game to the table, the first thing the publisher looks at is, oh my gosh, what's the cost? Yeah, I remember I was designing this. I designed a game with a friend. It was called 30 Minutes to Midnight, and it was a time-based. It was 30 minutes cooperative. But the problem was there were custom dice. There were like 16 or 20 custom dice in it, and every publisher was like, "Oh, this is expensive." It's like, yeah, but it's a fun game. Oh, that doesn't matter. It's the cost.
Oh yeah, at some level, the publishers actually just really want to look at, can I sell it?
Right.
Yes, it's a fun game, but I've seen other fun games. Can I sell this one?
Right.
Like, it's funny. Like we're bringing Belfort dice to Tasty Minstrel, and so Seth and Andy liked it, and they're saying, yeah, I like what you're doing with it. Keep doing it, but can you make less dice? And it's funny because all the dice are the same. It's one mold, but you might need 33 of them.
Dice game with less dice, please.
Yes. You might need 33 of them if...
Now with 30% less dice.
Yeah. Exactly. Sorry, Sir Bob is just asking how many units of This Town Ain't Big Enough sold. I actually don't know. I do know, but I don't know off the top of my head. I'd have to look in my files.
Did that go with Koi as well?
Yeah. Yeah, that's with Koi as well. So Koi is TMG's excuse me, Japanese line of small games. So
I have a mechanics question for you.
Sure.
And that is, what mechanic do you think is on its way out or too oversaturated? Yeah.
That is a good question.
Beyond deck building.
Yeah, beyond deck building.
Do you think dice games are on their way out?
I feel
No.
like there has been a peak.
Yeah.
I don't think they're out, but I think
I don't think they're out. I think there's a lot of different ways you can use dice innovatively.
Yeah.
That, like, literally innovatively. That I don't think dice will ever be out of the zeitgeist of gamers in general, especially now that people are realizing that it's not always luck. Dice don't always equal luck.
But I
And
feel
so
like
the designers are designing smarter games with
I
dice.
think there are a few commonalities. Like we probably are only going to see dice as workers for so much longer. We're only going to see so many times that it's a Yahtzee mechanic. I feel like there's probably some new ways to use dice that we're just not doing as much or not at all.
Yeah.
Super Dungeon fun. There you go.
Exactly, Super Dungeon. Other mechanics that might be on their way out or might be kind of oversaturated.
Yeah, what's the new trend?
Do you think cooperative games are here to stay, or?
Well, I mean, so we come from Canada, which is the land of co-op games. Oddly enough, no, there's this whole education market that's all co-op.
Canada?
Ugh.
They're hilarious.
I
Canada.
hate this stuff. Oh, there's a lot of educational co-op stuff. It's horrible.
Screw learning.
Yeah, no.
Or capitalism. No.
Yeah. I don't think co-op games are done because they allow people to work together to solve something that they couldn't individually do. That's the hope, right?
Right, sure. But do you think there's anything? I mean, obviously, this is a. Do you think there's anything that can be done new with that cooperative mechanic? That people.
Yeah. I mean, Hanabi did.
Yeah, I think if there's ways more like Hanabi without imitating Hanabi.
Right.
Like partial information, working together,
Yeah, or working together in a way that is really interesting. Like Time Stories is essentially a co-op game.
Oh, yeah.
And
that's going to be amazing.
I personally don't like it, but I see the benefits of it or the interest in it.
Game changer.
Which one?
Time Stories.
Time Stories.
Oh, so good.
I think like the legacy mechanic and the echo mechanics are going to be interesting game changers, but they also might be ones that you can't do it to everything.
Yep.
What other things might be?
What I was wondering about, I don't know if this is true. Maybe I'm just not in the scene, but I feel like battle or fighting has been kind of consumed by just like war games. And
what do you mean?
There's maybe going to be a swing back of using kind of like some type of not always fighting, but more take that-ish, like more
direct, more direct pokey
conflict in different ways. We've had a lot of kind of like basically like you're playing solo games against each other. I feel like there's going to be a bit of a swing of interaction and conflict more. I could be wrong on that, but
I see that a lot. I see a lot of players demanding, like, they always ask, there's no player interaction.
Yeah.
Right?
I think people are really craving that, where it's gotten to a point where we were so solid on, like, I don't want to eliminate anyone, I don't want to mess up anything you're working on all game long, I don't want to steal from you, I don't want to poke you. And so...
Roll and move. That's from Sir Bob. He said, roll and move.
It's coming back.
Especially with pandas.
Pandas and rivers.
Yeah. I mean, mechanically, is there any game that you can think of that killed another game in your collection? Like, what for you was the pinnacle of that mechanic that said, oh, you know what, every other game with that mechanic I can sell now?
Oh.
I'm such a game whore that I don't know that has happened.
I don't sell anything ever almost. So
I was just gonna say I want to be that person, but I can't let go.
But is there a
What
game that
about
you will no
Suze? I
longer
feel like
play?
Suze is probably the most responsible person here.
I don't know. I'm a hoarder though. Like I have.
Uh,
I mean, I'm sure
no,
you guys,
you're in
because you're
trouble.
designers, you have bigger ones, but like I have like 500 plus.
Oh yeah, you have a problem. You have a sickness. What about Justin's still chilling here? What about you, Justin? Is there any go-to games that's like it's just good enough for you that you don't need other games like it?
No, I can't think of any. I think I'm getting addicted just like you guys probably are. My collection is growing and not dwindling at all. So
How
Yeah.
many games do you have, Justin?
I'm at about 100, maybe a little over right now.
Oh,
Talk
it's-
to us in a year or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guarantee in a year it'll double.
Yeah.
That's my call.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a
I'm
scary
I'm
time.
even trying to think like games. Because I usually try. I usually can find a merit in every game. Like, hey, that game sucks, but no, this part is good.
Well, like for
I'm
me,
good for that.
Caverna. I got rid of Agricola when I got Caverna.
Yes.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay,
Yeah.
that is one that I do hear often.
But I Race for the Galaxy never clicked with me, which I know is like sacrilegious, but it just didn't click with me because I didn't get into it until the expansion was already out and there was just too much going on. But I love Roll for the Galaxy.
Agreed. I'm the
But
same.
that's not a mechanical firing.
No.
That's a very different thing. And I think the thing with games, right, is I can't. If there's somebody very frugal or of a lower income that can't afford these massive collections that crazy people like us have, I can see people like maybe being a little more thrifty as far as like, okay, I have a game that has this mechanic, so I'm good. Like I have a worker
Yeah.
placement game. I don't need Lords of Waterdeep and Stone Age. One as good as the other, like for my
Yep.
purposes.
Right.
But to what I think like what John was saying earlier and a couple other people are alluding to is like games are experiences, and when you can take you have this deck of unpub cards, right? And you have all these different mechanics, but you take two mechanics and you put them together. You have all the 60 mechanics. You mix and match. I mean, 504, right? It's Friedman Freeze's thing. You have 504 iterations just with 9 mechanics. And then you throw a theme on top of it, and then you throw all the cleverness in there. It's crazy.
I should give a proper plug to Unpub. I did say we use the cards not properly, so maybe just for anyone who doesn't know how Unpub works, just so that people do know, each card actually has 3 things on it. So it has theme, mechanic, and component. So the way the game works is that you actually each name like one of each of those, and then you have to pitch to each other a game that is that theme, that mechanic, and those components. So, like you said, I mean, 504 times, whatever, are the possibilities when you factor in components, you factor in theme, you factor in mechanics. So, totally agree with you. But I thought I'd explain the whole game to me.
Sir Bob is asking, what about more of the same expansions? Like, just more cards for deck builder or something like that. Do you guys buy those? Would you rather
I typically don't buy expansions, and the reason is because just learning from my own past experiences, those expansions almost never get to the table. I think they will, but they never do. About 98% of the time, the expansions don't make it.
So what are
Why?
the rule breakers for you?
Yeah.
What are the rule breakers? Which ones do you buy?
I really don't buy expansions anymore. Like tonight, like for instance, I was at the game store, and I was the 5 Tribes expansion was there.
Yep.
It's my weekly game night, and I was looking at it and go, oh, I want that, and then I stopped myself. I said, you know what, I'm not going to buy that because I don't play this game enough to warrant buying an expansion.
Yeah.
And I'm not. I'm a recovering completionist.
Yes. Yes.
Me too, man. Me too.
So I don't. The last expansion I bought was expansion for Roads and Boats, etc.
Yeah.
etc. And I only got it because I bought it for 50% off, and I haven't.
Can't resist a good deal.
I haven't used it. I guess my thought is, if it wasn't good enough to put in the initial game, then I'm not going to buy it.
I think that's always true, though. Like sometimes.
Sorry, John Gilmore.
I was just gonna say, I think sometimes designers have to pull things out, and maybe the expansion is where you get the full original intent.
Well, and that was actually my question was, do you think publishers ask people to pull things out so that they'll have an expansion if they, number one, want to kickstart maybe, or number two, they think the game's going to be really successful?
Well, even not successful, Walled City, we had stuff pulled out for expansion purposes.
Okay.
And
at the publisher's request?
Yep, and it probably won't happen, but I mean, it was originally designed with up to 5 players, and the boards in there include how you can play up to 5 players, but the idea was, hey, let's sell a 5th player with a couple more boards, and we can bring in some more guild cards, and the best way to bring all those things in and actually have like a meaningful expansion is, pull out some things that actually matter. So you actually have to buy it.
Interestingly, we've never had anything pulled.
I'm not a fan of it. I'm not a fan from a consumer aspect. Like when I buy a game and I can tell that there's some games I very much love, but like when they have symbols that aren't used in the base game because it's going to be used in the future expansion.
Yeah.
I feel like, that's something that was in there and they took out and they're just gonna sell me this. It's like an in-app purchase almost.
Right.
And I don't like that. Like with Dead of Winter, I approached the expansion from the ground up, like it's all new stuff, because I didn't want to just take stuff that we had pulled out before and put it back in.
Right.
Right.
But that's I designed it that way because that's what I would want as a consumer.
Yeah, I mean, we totally did the same thing for Belfort. It wasn't, none of the stuff that's in the expansion was even dreamed of, because it all came together when we actually had the parts in front of it and started moving new parts in with the parts that they had, because our parts were actually totally different. And so it ergonomically became a different game for us when we got the Tasty Minstrel version in front of us, and so we couldn't make an expansion like the expansion with the stuff that we had originally. So yeah, we never pulled stuff out. We always know that if it's a Kickstarter, that we're probably going to get asked to make new stuff, and we do that. But yeah, no, we've never actually been asked to cripple a game intentionally for Kickstarter purposes. There are times, though, that we've been asked to take out things because it's too complex.
Yeah.
And that's valid. I would agree that was valid. That, hey, take this out. This game we're thinking of for this market, because that's who we publish for. They won't get, most of the people won't like this part that you have here. I think it's cool, but it's too complex for our audience. So pull it out. And then whether or not they want to put it in an expansion is not really upfront at that point. I was like, no, we're going to put it in an expansion if people like it. No, it's just, pull it out. It's too complex. So we've done that before, but not for the purposes of selling it later.
Yeah.
Hey, it's 1:20.
Oh.
It's really freaking late. Justin, where are you located?
I'm in Colorado at Mountain Time, so it's only 11:20 here.
And for Sue's, it's like 10, right?
Party hasn't even started yet.
I know, right? That's why you're always so vivacious and lively, because you're early there.
Whereas, and she's just getting started.
And Daryl's like, bleh.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Suze, I gotta say this as well. I'm coming to Seattle in October, and I want to game it up. So you guys show me the cool spots and play lots of games.
Got it nailed. You gotta let me know all the details. I will.
I'm coming for a while
because
I'm coming to Sasquatch, but I'm coming between Essen and Sasquatch and hanging out lots. So.
After Essen and before Sasquatch, right?
Yeah. So. We will game it up.
All the details. I cannot. I'm so excited.
Awesome. Cool.
All right. Other than that, I guess we're going to wrap up. thanks very much, guys, for watching. Thanks to Brian Lewis, John Gilmore, Justin Farr, our lovely co-host. Oh, Justin, who made the shirts, of course, right there. Suzanne, for coming in, being a part of the show. John, we should talk very shortly.
Yes.
Not tonight, though. I'm super tired. And Brian, thanks. Good to meet you. Well, good to see you again. We've already met.
We'll talk soon, Brian. We're
Yeah,
gonna-
you're
Alright, sounds
apparently
good.
going to invent like 7 games.
Yeah.
We've already got our deck building trick taking game up and running.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that note, please, 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 go there. Go to these things. Reach us here. If you have any questions about the show, people you want to see on the show, if you just want to give us a shout out or props, wonderful. We'd love to hear from you. We love interacting with you guys, and thank you very much for watching. We'll see you all in 7 days. Bye.
Bye.